General Hospital spoilers for the week of August 18th to 22nd hint that Michael Corinthos will face a difficult situation while Josslyn Jax goes wild. Jason Morgan will also seek answers from Britt Westbourne, so expect some intense GH moments. First, Drew Kane will continue to illustrate that he is a total threat to society. Drew appears to be preparing to back Michael into a corner after employing additional manipulative tactics. Drew may use deception to persuade Michael to let Willow Tate visit the children, but Michael is unlikely to give in. Michael needs to do what's best for his children, but Drew will make things more difficult in the following episodes. Meanwhile, Willow and Harrison Chase's friendship will become even stronger. The scenario may be platonic for the time being, but how long will it remain so? Brooklyn Quartermain may be so preoccupied with Giovanni Gio Palmieri that she misses Chase and Willow's growing relationship. Brooklyn and Dante Falconeri appear to be teaming up to persuade Gio to open his heart, even if just slightly. Lulu Spencer may have some regrets about agreeing to adopt Outback. Outback isn't the easiest dog to deal with, so she's bound to cause some problems when she fits into Lulu's home. Rocco Falconeri agreed to assist with Outback, but he is busy with his pool job and may not be able to contribute as much as Lulu would like. Liesl Albrecht is determined to pursue her Rocco agenda. Albrecht's attachment to Rocco is understandable, given that he is her last link to Britt. Britt will face Jason's questions following their dramatic reunion at the Five Poppies Resort. Jason will eventually press Britt for answers regarding her alleged death, and the true reason she is still on the property. Britt may not reveal all of the circumstances just yet, but she is clearly being pressured into assisting with her drug doses. Britt appears to have landed a miraculous Huntington's disease treatment, but only after good lab results. Josslyn will decide to go rogue and reject Jack Brennan's directives. Josslyn will be determined to get information from Britt, but if she isn't careful, she may blow her cover and expose her WSB gig to Jason as well. Since it appears that Josslyn will save Vaughn from a life-threatening scenario, she may argue that he owes her. Even if Vaughn disagrees with Josslyn's risky actions, she may caution him not to stop her from accomplishing what she needs to do. According to General Hospital spoilers, Josslyn may wind up infuriating Brennan, so stay tuned for updates on all the terrifying news and explosive consequences. The General Hospital recap is officially here for Tuesday, August 12, 2025. Fans should expect Josslyn Jax to identify Britt Westbourne. Meanwhile, Lucas Jones gets slapped, and Carly Spencer kicks out Liesl Albrecht. Vaughn's kiss Josslyn awakens as Vaughn brings her breakfast into bed. She confronts him for allowing her to sleep in so late. The handler kisses her on the forehead before sending the room service away. Joss asks if the kiss was essential and he says, absolutely. He explains that they need to maintain their cover story. Vaughn recommends they go on a romantic walk through the garden to search for anything out of place. Josslyn recommends they break up. According to Joss, there are no phones at the spa, and guests will be at ease. Vaughn does not think it would be simple, but she agrees to do it her way. Britt Westbourne's reward. Britt lies beside the pool, glancing at a photograph of Rocco Falconeri and Liesl. Pascal approaches. The brunette deserved her break. Pascal agrees that the job was quite impressive. As Josslyn returns to Vaughn, the handler deals with Britt at the pool. He sits down and removes his shirt quickly. He fabricates a narrative regarding real estate in the region. They talk about the resort's manager. Britt considers him useless. Then Vaughn asks Britt to show him around, but she mentions the wedding ring. Is he happily married? Britt inquires. Vaughn jokes that it's too soon to tell. Britt wonders how his wife would react to her conversing with another woman. A hotel employee attempts to escort Joss, but she responds, "There's my husband." Vaughn doesn't hear, and Joss observes him interacting with Britt. She is jealous. Vaughn is now offering to massage sunscreen on Britt's back. Joss cannot believe what she sees as Britt turns around. Doggone dilemma as Gio Palmieri and Rocco discuss the dog. Liesl walks in. She's thrilled with the cute tiny creature. She comes to pet the dog just as Lulu Spencer goes past the pool area. She almost takes a step forward before changing her mind and going the opposite direction. Joe's break is about to end, therefore he must leave. After he leaves, Rocco asks Liesl if Britt enjoyed pets. Anna Devane confronted. Anna Devane attempts to reason with Emma Scorpio Drake while holding a glass of juice. Emma confronts her grandma about canceling Professor Henry Hank Dalton's speech. Emma doesn't understand why Anna is getting in her way. The commissioner is attempting to save Emma from herself. Later, Gio informs Emma that Anna is a former spy, and the plot is complete. Emma disagrees. Lucas Jones/Drew Kane steps off the hospital elevator and approaches Willow Tate, who is busy working. She attempts to get rid of him, but he continues to chat. Lucas interrupts and urges him to go lost. He possesses resources that she does not. Willow doesn't care and attempts to walk away, but he stops her. She tells him not to pretend to be a good guy. The phone rings and Drew learns that Scout Quartermain is missing. Willow's head rises in worry as she overhears, and Drew fills her in. Willow tries to reassure him from a distance, while Lucas eavesdrops. Willow then thanks Lucas. He does, however, call out the nurse. Drew embarrassed her in public, so why bother with him? Lucas feels it's pathetic, and Willow doesn't handle it well. Willow hits him across the face while they continue to argue about Drew and Wiley Corinthos. He genuinely gasps. Lulu goes to see Carly Spencer and asks her to evict Liesl from the Metro Court today. The reporter shows Liesl and Rocco caressing a puppy. Carly says sarcastically, "That is terrible." Lulu keeps ranting. Carly tries to talk Lulu down, but she continues to push. Carly agrees. After Lulu exits the Metro Court, Carly watches Alexis Davis and Marco Rios conversing. Danny Morgan's crime Jason Morgan inquires as to what is happening. Danny Morgan says he invited someone over, and Scout approaches to hug his right-hand guy. Danny admits that he took Scout. Scout misses everybody. Danny didn't inform anyone. He simply grabbed Scout and ran. Jason proposes phoning Drew, but Scout says no. Scout does not want to leave. Returning to Alexis, she needs the services of an attorney who is familiar with the rights of grandparents. She needs an unbiased lawyer and informs Marco about Drew and her circumstances. The attorney agrees with Molly Lansing Davis' assessment. They know Drew will most likely get Scout back and will go for Alexis with everything he has. Jason calls and wants her to come over quickly. When Alexis arrives, Scout rushes into her arms. Danny takes Scout to the stable so Jason and Alexis can speak. Jason explains. Returning to Alexis, she speaks with Scout discreetly. Why did she leave camp, and why did she call Danny rather than Drew? Her father is aware, but life happens, and Drew is unable to take her to see her family. Alexis offers to talk to Drew and gives her a hug. Drew appears shortly after looking furious. He wants to bring charges. He orders Danny's arrest for kidnapping. Everyone is surprised, including Detective Harrison Chase. Meanwhile, Carly confronts Marco regarding Lucas. She only asks for complete honesty from Lucas, and he deserves it. Marco simply acknowledges and exits. Read this. General Hospital spoilers. Isaiah attempts to save Portia from Drew Outback's new home. Lulu returns and discovers that Liesl is still with Rocco and the puppy. She turns around and starts chatting with Anna and Chase. The detective leaves and Lulu sits down with Anna. Now Lulu and Rocco are discussing the puppy. He brings up the fact that Liesl wanted to take the dog but was unable to do so. Lulu unexpectedly chooses to let the puppy live with them. This makes Rocco quite delighted. Over with Liesl, she storms over to confront Carly. Carly claims that she is being evicted due to hazardous mold. Liesl warns her not to keep her away from Rocco. The tension at Port Charles was thicker than the late summer humidity, which clung to the skin and refused to let go. Everyone could feel it. The subtle shifts in conversation, the long gaps where trust should have been, and the restless looks that suggested no one truly believed the calm would endure. Josslyn was in the center of it all, restless and driven in a way that made those who cared for her proud and deeply concerned. She had arrived to a point when waiting for someone else to take the initiative was no longer an option. It wasn't simply stubbornness, it was conviction. Something in her gut told her that if she didn't act now, the truth would be buried beneath layers of half-truths, and the wrong people would continue to wield power. She had attempted to do everything carefully. She had asked inquiries. She'd listened whenever she could. She had gone so far as to sit calmly in the room while others made decisions that harmed everyone she cared about. But the breaking point came 2 nights ago when she overheard a phone call, not the entire discussion, just a brief exchange, but it was enough to realize that the walls around them weren't merely closing in, but being pushed by someone with aim. The familiar voice made her skin crawl, and the unexpected silence after a single name was pronounced made it plain that no one was safe. Josslyn went rogue. She didn't declare it, tell Trina, or even hint at Dex, because if she did, someone would try to talk her out of it, and she couldn't afford to be hesitant. The next morning she dressed plainly, preferring to blend in rather than stand out, and slipped her phone into her pocket, not for calls but for evidence. Every step she made into Port Charles felt like she was crossing a border from which she could never return, but she didn't care. Meanwhile, Jason was experiencing a different type of storm. He had been more patient than most guys in his position. He gave Britt room, knowing that her life had been turned upside down in ways no one could have predicted. He had attempted to convince himself that she would ultimately come to him willingly, and tell him the truth without him having to push. But the time had run out. He could no longer rationalize allowing her to keep secrets that endangered both their lives, and the lives of others. When Jason arrived in the remote corner of the hospital parking lot where Britt had agreed to meet him, his eyes searched the surroundings reflexively. He never let go of his old behaviors, especially those that kept him alive. Britt appeared from the side entrance, her hair slightly windblown, her lab coat unbuttoned, and her gaze darting around as if to see who was watching. She appeared to be both frightened and weighed down, but Jason was not here to sympathize this time. "We're past polite conversations," he remarked, his voice low and steady as she approached. "I need answers, Britt." Her initial inclination was to deflect. She was skilled at it, had been for years, but something in his tone pierced her defense before she could even try. She crossed her arms, somewhat to protect herself and partly to buy time. "Do you think demanding them will change anything?" she inquired, her tone harsh but brittle. "It will," Jason responded, moving closer and locking his gaze on hers. "Because I am done waiting. You know what's coming, and if you don't tell me right away, you won't be the only one to pay the price." Britt's jaw tightened. She despised the way he could see through her, how he didn't blink when her rage flared. "You believe you understand everything, but you don't. If I tell you, it not only makes you a target, but everyone you care about as well." "Too late," Jason answered bluntly. "That's already happened." Their quiet was tense, full of unspoken history and mutual understanding. Jason never raised his voice. He didn't need to. But Britt could feel the weight of his words bearing down, giving her little place to breathe, let alone evade. Her eyes flashed, letting Jason know she was breaking. She finally breathed gently, as if submitting had cost her something personal. "It's not just me," she whispered. "There's more to this than you realize." Jason waited, and when she didn't respond, he gave her the same steady stare that had deceived so many before her. "Then make me realize this. Right now." During this altercation, Josslyn's trail had led her further than she had intended. She found herself on the fringes of a neighborhood she had only seen once years before, when her mother was embroiled in another perilous situation. The houses here were wider apart, with overgrown hedges and blind corners, ideal for hiding someone or anything. She approached gently, staying in the shadows, her phone at the ready in case she spotted anything worth recording. Her heart pounded in her chest when she noticed a black SUV idling at the end of the street. There was no one inside, or at least none visible, but the engine was going. She was familiar enough with Sunny and Jason to know that cars like this rarely remained idle for long periods of time. She hid behind a row of bushes, pulling her hoodie up to conceal her identity, and watched. Back in the hospital parking lot, Britt began to speak, though each syllable seemed like it was being yanked from her. She spoke of failed agreements, names Jason recognized but hadn't heard in years, and a network of relationships that crossed not only municipal lines but also international borders. The more she revealed, the more Jason saw why she had kept this to herself, and why it was difficult to keep anyone out of the crossfire just now. When she eventually came to a halt, her shoulders fell, and she stared at him with a mix of relief and fear. "Now you know," she replied gently. Jason nodded once. "Now I understand. And now we act." Neither of them anticipated that their timelines were about to collide with Josslyn's in a way that would render all of their careful planning ineffective. Because as Josslyn crept closer to the SUV, taking a snapshot of its license plate, she noticed movement in her peripheral vision. The reflection of someone emerging out of a side door of a house across the street. The figure was tall, broad-shouldered, and walked with the casual assurance of someone who didn't expect to be noticed. She immediately recognized who it was. Her stomach squeezed, her heart quickened, and the decision to hide or confront them became instinctive. Against every norm she had ever learned, she chose confrontation. When Jason left Britt, his phone buzzed with a single text message. "You should see this." Now, it came from Josslyn. He didn't need a location or an explanation. He could read the urgency between the phrases. When he arrived, the situation was tense, with Josslyn standing a few yards away from the SUV, her hands clenched at her sides, and the man she recognized gazing her down with a faint, almost pleased smile. Jason stepped into view without hesitation, suddenly changing the balance. The man's smile had disappeared. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said. Jason, his voice calm but his eyes piercing. Jason did not answer to him immediately. Instead, he looked at Josslyn. "You are coming with me. Now." Josslyn didn't argue, not because she was afraid, but because she understood the line between bravery and recklessness had been crossed. Jason positioned himself between her and the man, every muscle in his body braced for whatever might come next. In that explosive moment, all of the disparate threads, Josslyn's renegade investigation, Britt's reluctant confession, and Jason's quest for answers, merged into a single frightening reality. Whatever was coming was not going to wait for them to be prepared. And deep down, Jason understood the most difficult thing wasn't gaining the truth from Britt or keeping Josslyn safe. It was acknowledging that in this struggle, the rules they'd followed no longer applied. The game had shifted and they were right in the middle of it. If you like, I can expand this to 2,000 words with deeper dialogue, backstory, and more emotional beats between Josslyn, Jason, and Britt, making it flow like a real General Hospital screenplay scene. This would make it feel like a completely developed episode. Would you like me to continue? Crestwood, a little village, pulsed with electric tension that hadn't been felt in years. It was a place where everyone knew everything about everyone else, where secrets were as rare and transient as a summer storm. However, that week, the air was thick with murmurs, and the town's charming charm was crumbling under the weight of scandal. It began with Britt, a lady whose keen wit and sharper tongue had always made her a divisive figure. She was spotted late at night behind the old mill, which had long been abandoned and was rumored to be a sanctuary for illegal activities. Nobody knew for sure what she was doing there, but rumors spread like wildfire. Some reported she was meeting a stranger, while others claimed they observed her exchanging odd words with a man in a dark coat. Her presence in the mill sparked the town's dormant suspicions, not just piqued curiosity. Britt had always been a bit of a mystery, her life a jumble of half-truths and audacious deceptions. She worked at the neighborhood diner, serving coffee and quips with equal accuracy, but her late-night adventures revealed that there was more to her story than anybody had imagined. The townsfolk, always looking for a spectacle, began to follow her every step, their whispers becoming louder with each day. Then came Lucas, the town's golden boy, at least until that fateful Tuesday. Lucas was the type of man who could charm a snake right out of its skin, with a disarming smile and an untouchable reputation. He ran the hardware store, a hotbed of town gossip, where he'd patiently nod to the elderly men's stories while giving free nails to kids building treehouses. But that day, in the center of the town square, Lucas was slapped hard by none other than Clara, the librarian who was both calm and formidable. The crack of her hand against his cheek reverberated like a gunshot, stopping bystanders in their tracks. Clara's face was a mask of rage, her eyes burning with a passion that no one knew she possessed. She didn't say anything, just turned on her heel and rushed away, leaving Lucas red-faced and the audience stunned. Nobody knew what caused it, but the possibilities were boundless. Some claimed Lucas was spreading lies about Clara's past, while others speculated he had been caught in a compromising scenario with her sister. Whatever the truth, the slap broke Lucas' carefully built image, and the village began to wonder if their golden child was as golden as they had imagined. He attempted to laugh it off later at the bar, but his typical charisma was strained, and his jokes fell flat. Crestwood was beginning to notice flaws in its heroes, and Lucas was no exception. Liesl's eviction came next, delivering a devastating blow to an already reeling community. Liesl was a widow who lived in a modest house on the outskirts of Crestwood, her garden a riot of color that wowed even the most cynical neighbors. She was quiet, gentle, and kept to herself, but she had paid her rent late one too many times, and the landlord, a cold guy from out of town, was fed up with her excuses. The eviction notice was nailed on her door as a public humiliation, and before midday, the entire village knew. Liesl didn't beg or plead. She packed her belongings with a serene dignity that made the scene all the more painful. Neighbors gathered, some offering assistance, others simply watching, their expressions a mix of sympathy and discomfort. Liesl's story was more than just unpaid rent. It was about a woman who'd lost her husband in a factory accident years ago, and had been living on a small pension and odd jobs. The village had rallied around her previously, but when faced with her eviction, they appeared paralyzed. A few others attempted to assist, beginning a collection to pay her rent, but the landlord refused to budge. Liesl departed Crestwood that evening, her car loaded with whatever she could carry, and the town felt her absence like a wound. The cottage lay abandoned, its garden already wilting, a mute reproach to a society that had allowed one of its own to pass away. And then there was Danny, the deciding blow in a week that Crestwood would never forget. Danny was a vagabond, a young man who'd arrived in town a year earlier with a guitar and a penchant for mischief. He wasn't a horrible person. He was just restless, always seeking something he couldn't identify. He'd found work at the auto shop, where his quick hands and easy laugh made him popular, even if his late-night bar antics raised eyebrows. But when the police cruiser arrived outside the shop on Thursday morning, no one expected what happened next. Danny was let out in handcuffs, his face pale but defiant, as the sheriff read off charges that no one could believe. Theft, vandalism, and something vague about disturbing the peace. The details were murky, but the story that emerged painted Danny as the perpetrator of a string of petty crimes, stolen tools, spray-painted walls, and a broken window at the community center. The town was startled. Danny had been a rogue maybe, but a criminal? It did not add up. Some claimed he was being framed, while others believed he was always trouble waiting to happen. His arrest was the final thread plucked from Crestwood's unraveling tapestry, leaving the town to deal with difficult problems. The events of the week did not occur in isolation. They were interwoven in such a way that Crestwood felt like a set for some dismal drama. Britt's late-night rendezvous at the mill began to feel tied to Danny's arrest, but no one could prove it. Had she passed him something? Money, commodities, or secrets? The rumors became darker, implying that she was more than simply a bystander in the town's problems. Lucas's smack also took on new meaning. Was Clara's rage related to Britt's secrets, or was it something deeper, more personal that Lucas had discovered? And Liesl, poor Liesl. Her eviction seemed to cast a pall over the town's moral compass, as if her departure was a punishment for their failure to act. The connections were unclear, but the town's imagination filled up the gaps, with each rumor building on the previous one until Crestwood was a tangle of mistrust and doubt. In the days that followed, the diner became a hotbed of speculation. Old men lingered over coffee, piecing together theories like investigators in a noir novel. Britt continued working her shifts, her smile tighter, her gaze scouring the room for eavesdroppers. She did not dispute the mill incident, but she also did not explain it, leaving the people with unanswered questions. Meanwhile, Lucas retreated into himself, his charm replaced by a silent brooding that made him appear weird. He avoided the square, Clara, and anyone who could have questions. Clara's workplace, the library, became a pilgrimage destination for the curious, but she provided no answers, her silence as violent as her smack. And Liesl's cottage, now abandoned, lured children who dared each other to peek through its windows, half expecting to see spirits. Danny's arrest, however, was the narrative that wouldn't die. The sheriff's office kept quiet, but that only fueled the fire. Some claimed Danny collaborated with someone, possibly Britt, on a failed scam. Others suspected he was a scapegoat, framed for crimes to protect someone higher up, possibly even Lucas, whose fall from grace had left the people searching for answers. The auto shop where Danny worked became a shrine, with co-workers defending his name and customers whispering about his guilt. The truth, if it existed, was buried beneath layers of rumor, each narrative more bizarre than the next. Crestwood was not a large town, but it had a lengthy history. The events of that week, Britt's sighting, Lucas's slap, Liesl's eviction, and Danny's arrest, became the stuff of legend, with each version becoming a little more dramatic, a little less accurate. The mill, the square, the cottage, and the auto shop were no longer just locations. They were chapters in a story Crestwood couldn't stop telling. People began to look at one another differently, wondering who else was hiding anything or who could crack under the weight of the town's attention. Crestwood's once solid foundation of trust was dissolving, replaced by a restless inquiry bordering on paranoia. Britt faced the scrutiny with defiance. She did not flee town or hide from the stares. Instead, she embraced her role as the enigma, allowing the whispers to spread while she poured coffee and traded jabs with the regulars. Lucas, on the other hand, appeared disheartened, his confidence undermined. He continued to run the hardware store, but the old man observed a lack of spring in his step. Clara, too, altered, her quiet firmness now tinged with something tougher, as if the smack had liberated something long suppressed. The women who knew Liesel the best felt her absence the most, and they planned quiet gatherings to explore how they could have done more. And Danny, well, Danny was gone, his destiny decided in a courtroom far from Crestwood, but his name remained, a cautionary tale for the restless and reckless. The town attempted to go on, but it was not the same. The diner was still packed, and the square was still bustling, but there was a heaviness now, as if Crestwood had crossed a line that it couldn't cross again. The mill remained silent, its secrets kept away. The cottage began to disintegrate, and the garden was overwhelmed by weeds. The car shop hired a new mechanic, but no one could replicate Danny's chuckle. And in the quiet moments when the town paused to gather its breath, the questions persisted. What had Britt done that night? Why did Clara hit Lucas? Could Liesel have been saved? And was Danny truly guilty? Crestwood didn't have the answers, but it would keep asking, looking, and recounting the narrative until the truth became just another rumor lost in the noise.